Hello, everybody. My name's Will, and today I'm going to go ahead and start a little something for a service project for my English class at school. I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and do a tutorial series on how to go ahead and code and create a game. Now, as soon as I said that, almost all of you probably already thought, yeah, I'm not doing this. I can tell, I can read your minds. You think I can't see you, but I can. So, I'm going to make this really easy for you. There are many different languages, right, that you can use to code, just like how there are many different languages that you can use to speak. In this case, we're going to go nice and simple. I'm going to teach you guys from the beginning how to go ahead and code and make a game. And the skills that you learn here, you can translate that into other programming languages in the future if you decide to get into more complex programming languages and create more complex video games or programs in general, right? It doesn't matter what it is. So, without further ado, I just want to let you guys know this is family friendly. I invite everyone to go ahead and try this and see if you enjoy it. For kids, I highly encourage you guys to try this as well. This could be nice and simple. We're not going to do anything crazy, right? And it'll be a great learning experience for you guys, especially because the technology industry, especially the booming video game industry, is looking for young, talented people like me, like you, to be able to create the next generation of games or create the next generation of programs in other companies as well. Now, clearly you can see here I'm on Mac, but that doesn't matter. You can do this on Windows as well. It's the exact same. You can follow the tutorial wherever we go. There may be certain things that are just not possible, and I'll explain why later. And if you guys enjoy it, then you guys can do it. And at the end of this tutorial series, whatever game you guys make, I want you to go ahead and send that to me so I can play it, and I will record myself playing through your games as a part of my service project. That way I can go ahead and upload the whole shebang, and it'll be great. And I guess if enough people like it, then perhaps this is something that I can continue doing in the future. So, to get started off, first and foremost, I want everybody to go ahead, open up your favorite browser of choice, right? Could be Microsoft Edge, could be Google Chrome, could be Safari, Opera, Firefox, whatever the heck you use. Go ahead and open that sucker up and go to yoyogames.com. Alright, this company here has created a product called GameMaker Studio 2. Believe it or not, this is actually a really, really great program. Do not let the name confuse you. Don't think that this is something, a lot of people say, no, you can't make a game with this. However, there are many, many games that have been made in this program that have been given very high credit and rewards, and awards, I should say, from many different sources. Many indie game developers use this program to make their games. You can find these games on mobile phones, on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, on the Nintendo Switch even, right? You can find these games pretty much anywhere now. Some of the more notable ones, we have Hyper Light Drifter. This is an award-winning game, right? We have Swords of Ditto, Rivals of Aether, right? We have Levelhead, right, by Butterscotch here. And you can just keep on going, right? Super Crate Box by Vlambeer, the same guys who made Nuclear Throne. Downwell. This game has become a immensely popular game on mobile phones, right? Here's Nuclear Throne, like I was mentioning. Crashlands, again, by Butterscotch, right? We have Samurai Gun. This game is also a wonder, right? Nidhogg 1 and 2, right? Feral Fury. And you can just keep on going, keep on going. Spelunky, the original Spelunky was also made in GameMaker, right? And another game that was also made in GameMaker that is probably the most phenomenal blah 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 of all is Undertale. Undertale is a game that was made in this program as well. I bet you if I were to go and search for it, you could probably find it. No, I can't find it there. But take my word for it, Undertale was made here in this program, right? There are many different genres that people have made. It's on all the platforms, right? All of them. You can do things from random generation, complex, and like real-time lighting to the simplest of the simplest, right? And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and do the simplest of the simplest, and we're going to go ahead and make a platformer game, right? So think Mario Bros, Rayman Legends, Donkey Kong, you know, that kind of stuff. So first and foremost, I want you guys to come here. I want you guys to go ahead and download the free trial of Game Maker Studio 2. If you just click it, it'll go ahead and have you log in. You might have to create an account, right? But this is free for 30 days, right? This is all we need right now. If you enjoy it, right, there are yearly licenses for Windows and Mac at $40. And if you're really, really serious about it, then you can go ahead and buy it permanently for $100. And this gives you the Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can get stuff to do web games, right? Mobile games, put stuff onto the Xbox, right? Onto the Xbox One Creators Program using the Universal Windows platform, so on and so forth. And then if you get really serious and you start doing some really crazy stuff and you have enough money for it, then you can also buy the stuff to put it onto the consoles as well, right? But don't worry about that. Just get the free trial. It's 30 days. Go ahead and do that. And once that is installed, go ahead and come back to this. Go ahead and pause it, install it, get it running, do all that jazz, come back to this, and then we'll go ahead and keep going. All right? All right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys have that downloaded. I hope everything is working as it should, right? When you open it up, you'll probably see something like this, right? This is what it looks like here, right? If you're doing a lot of stuff like me, you'll probably have a lot of stuff here in your recent projects, but probably for you, right now, it'll be completely empty, right? And we're just going to go ahead, we're going to make a new project. Now, there are two different versions here. You can use drag and drop, or you can use the Game Maker language, which is a programming language that is very similar to C and C#, right? It is technically object-oriented, right? It's more visually object-oriented rather than not as visual, right? So you can visibly see the objects and you can see everything and all that jazz, right? But it's much simpler. It's very easy to use. It's not complex at all, all right? And so I want you guys to go ahead and create a new Game Maker language, or GML, as I will refer to it for the rest of the series. Go ahead and create a new GML project. Go ahead and name it whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and name it, I'm going to go ahead and give it the name of one of my older games here, Diamante, which it basically means diamond in Spanish. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to base this platformer game off of this idea here of one of my older projects that had the same name. You hit save, it'll go ahead and open everything up, and then you should see this here, right? I like to have mine a bit smaller just so that I have more room here to see everything. So you'll go ahead and you'll see, you know, here on the left, on the right hand side, right, you'll have your sprites, tile sets, sounds, so on and so forth, objects, and rooms. Now, to keep this nice and easy, the only ones that we're really going to use is going to be sprites, scripts, objects, and rooms, right? So those are the main ones that we're going to be using. We're not really going to be doing anything else. If you want to add on sound effects, we can do that eventually as well. But really right now, we just want to go ahead and make a game, right? So you can do a lot of things here. The first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is create a sprite. Now a sprite is a 2D image of whatever, right? It doesn't matter what size it is, doesn't matter if it's big or small. A 2D image normally, right, is called a sprite. Now, normally sprites are smaller, right? And if you were to right click, right, so if I were to do that again real quick, if I right click here, you can go ahead and create a sprite. You can create sprites from images, like if you're going to do it with a, like if you had like multiple images, like 5 different images or whatever, right? And so on and so forth. But ignore all these down here. Don't even worry about that. Just click on create sprite. It'll go ahead and open this up right here. The normal base size for the majority of stuff is at 64 by 64. We're going to go ahead and actually make this smaller, right? But first, we're going to go ahead and name this SPRT player. And this will be our player sprite, our player image, right? And we're going to go ahead and make this really simple. And we're just going to change the size using this button over here. It's just resize the sprite. We're going to go ahead and resize this, and I like to have my player character around 24 by 24. However, over here you can just resize the canvas instead of scaling the image. And most of the time you'll want to resize the canvas if you want more room or less room instead of scaling the image. Because when you scale the image, the whole thing is going to either expand or it's going to shrink, and it'll either look really big and poofy, or it'll look really small and janky, and we don't want that, right? Pixel art and 2D art in general, especially when it's smaller, it's meant to look nice and crisp. It's meant to have those nice hard edges that define what the image is, kind of like in the older games on the NES, right, or on the Game Boy Advance, right? Those kinds of games. And so we're going to go for something nice and easy like that. So we're just going to say that the width is going to be 24 and our height is going to be, let's say, 28. This goes ahead and gives us a nice image. So what I did here, right, is I went and double clicked this, the actual image, right? The frame, I should say. However, you can also just click this button here on the left that says edit image, and it will take you right here. If you go ahead and hit F12, that will go ahead and close out the side. You don't have to do that. That's just something that I normally do just because it's nice, it's easy, it clears up everything for me. And then I normally hit this center fit here so that I can go ahead and center the actual image so that I can go ahead and draw and do whatever I need to do. However, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just fill this with a white color. So over here on the right hand side, you see that we have our colors, right? We have different brushes as well, so you can make your own brushes and all that jazz. We have a layer system as well, which is very convenient. But for now, we're just going to be focusing on the toolbox here. So we normally have a paintbrush tool, or in this case, a pencil, right? So you just go ahead and draw a whole bunch of lines. We have a eraser tool, so if I were to go ahead and do that again, for instance, right? I can go ahead and then come in and erase those lines, right? If you were to change your brush size here, it will change the size of your eraser or your pencil, right, to whatever the size of that brush is, or shape of that brush, right? Because there's the square one, and then there's also this more rounded one here. And then the one that we're just going to use for right now is this fill tool here. The hotkey is F. I always just go ahead and use the hotkeys. So you'll probably see me using these three the most here, and probably this one here as well, which is select. Just the rectangle selection. I can go ahead and select whatever image, and then I can move it around, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit F. I'm just going to fill this with a white color, and this is going to be my player character for now. We're going to go ahead and do some crazy stuff with this guy. We're going to maybe make him look like he's more of like a squishy block kind of thing going on, right? Give him some jazz, make him look nice and smooth, make him feel really nice and smooth. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do with him, right? After you're done doing that, and of course you could choose any other color as well. It doesn't have to be white. I just do mine white. You can go ahead and hit this X button here. You can go ahead and hit the center fit here. It just shows you where your character's at. You might want to go ahead and hit this zoom out button once. And here's our image now. So now we have a player sprite, right? We have an image. So what I'm actually going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to set the origin of the player. Now what the origin is, right, is this plus sign here, right? And this will actually determine where the player will be, right, in the game world, inside of your levels. So normally what you want to do for a platform character is that you want to go ahead and set it at the bottom here, right? Now right here there's a little box. If you were to click this drop down arrow or click the box, it'll show you a whole bunch of different positions that you could put the origin at. We're going to use bottom center. This puts it at the bottom and at the center of the character, which would be where the feet of the character would be, right? So we're going to do that. If you hit Control or Command S, you can go ahead and save it. You'll probably see this blue bar up here flash a lot, just because I've learned many a lesson and I save a lot. So we can go ahead and X there now. And over here, you remember how we hit that F12 earlier? This will go ahead and open it back up. So if we click on this, boom, there we go. We now have our bar again, and it shows everything that we need. So nice and easy, we're going to go in, we're going to right click on objects, we're going to hit create object. And we're going to say obj underscore player. Player. I like using lower cases for the objects, and I've kind of gotten used to the Unreal Engine 4 scheme of naming stuff, so you'll probably see me using a lot of capitals as well. Normally, you really want to stick to one convention, right, when you're writing stuff, but I'll explain that to you right now. So we can go ahead and right click or hit this add event button. We're going to create a create event, right? We're going to add a create event. Now what the create event does, right, is that this is the very first thing that the computer will run when the game starts up, and when this particular instance of this object is loaded into memory, right? So basically what that means is that when the player is first shown in the level, this will be the first piece of code that will run, right? So right here, we'll go ahead and change that from saying insert description to initialize, if I can type, the player. Then I'll get rid of this. Boom. So there we go. So now we want to go ahead and really focus on the very, very basics here. So I'm going to go ahead and maximize it. You can do that if I were to open this up again. Well, let me exit that real quick. If I go back and then hit this button over here, this will maximize the window and it'll give it to us in full screen. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit F12 again to close off the side. And now I have a nice clean space here to write all of my code. So first and foremost, when we're doing this, we're going to go ahead and start off with two things. The first is going to be data types, right? Which we will then convert into variables, right? Normally, when you code, there are a few different data types, right, that you can use. And data types, basically what it is, right, is that it is a piece of information that is stored inside of a variable that will then define what kind of information the computer will read, right? In the simplest of terms, right? In the simplest of terms. So a int, right? This would be a number, right? So 5, for instance, right? A string, right? This would be, text. So hello world, right? And then we have doubles, right? which would be like 5.5. These are also pretty much the same as a float, right? Floats and doubles are the same in GameMaker language pretty much, right? And then we also have a Boolean, right? And this is basically one or the other, right? It's either a true or it's a false, right? Now, this is not how you would go ahead and define your variables and data types in GML. It's actually much, much simpler. However, if you're going to be using a different language in the future, then most likely, right, you'll say something like int num1 equals 5, right? This is how you would write it in the majority of other programming languages. Here, we don't need to do that. We can literally just say the name of our variable, right? So let's say num1 equals 5, and this is an integer, right? We can go ahead and say string name equals my name, right? And this would be a string. You can go ahead and say num2 equals 5.5, and this will be a double or a float, right? It's more of a double though. And then we could go ahead and say valid is equal to false, and that would be a Boolean, right? So with that said, we're going to go ahead and give our player some very, very important variables here, right? Some very, very important information here. When the player is first loaded, we want the player to know these things. The first is going to be its move speed, right? How fast can the player move? We're going to go ahead and set this to 2 for now, right? The next two variables that we want to define is going to be its horizontal movement and its jump speed, right? So we're going to go ahead and say jump speed, and normally you can get away with doubling the move speed, but for all fun purposes, right, this is a game, we're going to go ahead and triple it, and we're going to say that the jump speed is 6. However, when you're jumping, to go up, right, to go vertically up, you actually want to use a negative number. So if I were to go ahead and make a plus here, right, think of it kind of like a graph. So in this case, it's an upside down graph. So you have positives going down, or positives going to the right, and then you have negatives going to the left, and negatives going up, right? So this is the y-axis, and this is the x-axis. And so we want to go ahead and move the player on the x-axis left and right, and on the vertical, or the y-axis, right, we want him to go up and down. So we're actually going to go ahead and set his jump speed to -6, and this will make it so that the player will jump up instead of down. Now, the next two variables, right, like I said, is going to be our horizontal speed and our vertical speed. Now, these two variables here, right, are technically one because we actually don't need the vertical one because we have jump speed. But for our, actually, yeah, we will need vertical speed. So anyway, ignore what I just said. So for our vertical and horizontal speed, we're just going to go ahead and assign these variables as h speed, and we want to go ahead and set this to 0, and v, I actually want to go ahead and do that, yeah, v speed equals 0. So this here is going to go ahead and define our horizontal speed and our vertical speed, right? So now what we're going to go ahead and do, the next important variable that the player needs is going to be gravity, right? When the player jumps up, or when he's in the air, he should fall back down, right? So we want to go ahead and give him some gravity. We want him to feel a little bit heavy, right? So we're going to go ahead and say gravity equals 0.25. And of course you can play with this, right? If you want to have a really heavy character, you can make this gravity really, really high, or you can make it much, much lower, right? And make them almost like a super jump kind of thing, right? So for now, let's just go ahead and set this gravity here to 0.25, right? Now, something else that I forgot to mention is that I have gotten used to using the naming convention for Unreal Engine 4, right, which is in C++, and their naming convention for their variables is with uppercase letters in the front. You don't actually have to do that. In GameMaker Studio, you can go ahead and use lowercase in the front. You never want to start off with a number, though. This is just bad practice in general. Never start off with a number in front of a variable, right? Never do that. Always start off with either a lowercase variable or a uppercase variable, right? But you want to make sure that it's clear, that you can actually see it, right? You don't want it to be something confusing. So putting in move with a capital M and speed with a capital S, it's nice and clear for me. I can see that nice and well. That's just how I've been doing it now, because I've been learning how to go ahead and work with Unreal Engine and C++ more. You don't have to do it that way, but either way, if you start off with a lowercase or with an uppercase, it'll be just fine. Anyway, so now that we have these set variables here, we want to go ahead and add on 4 more variables. Now, these 4 more variables here actually pertain to our image, instead of making it move up and down and left and right and all that jazz, right? We want to go ahead and make sure that the character will be scaled to size. And what I mean by that, right, is that we can, with code, we can scale the character up or down, make him bigger or smaller, right? And by doing that, if we do it wrong, it can also change the size of the collision box of the player, which could become an issue and give problems in the future. So what we will do instead is we're just going to make up our own variables for our scaling instead. So we're going to go ahead and say x scale equals 1 and y scale equals 1. We've added in the y scale and the x scale. This is just to make sure that everything is to scale for our character. But then we also need to go ahead and add in here image underscore x scale. And when we type this in, you can see it turns green instead of being white like these other variables up here. That's because this is a built-in variable, right? This is a built-in kind of variable kind of function thing in GameMaker language, right? In GML that is already defined, right? Normally, we don't want to use anything that is built in. We want to only, for the most part, create our own variables so that we can control all of the information instead of having it set like this. However, I did mention that we're going to go ahead and give our players some squash and some stretch, right? Make them look kind of cool, make them look a bit squishy. And for that, we actually will use our image underscore x scale and image underscore y scale. So we're going to set these to 1 as well. And there you go. So now that those have been defined, I'm just going to go ahead and add in a couple comments here. You can define comments by doing 2 forward slashes here. Now I'm just going to say this is the player's move speed, is the player's jump speed. Oops. This is the player's horizontal speed, and this is the player's vertical speed, and this is the player's gravity. I'll go ahead and put these in here too. This is the player's X scale. Player's Y scale. And I'm going to put these up here. This is the base X scale and Y scale of the player. And let's go ahead and stay consistent. Boom. Alright. Now, believe it or not, this part is now done. Finished. Done. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and just close right out of that. We can hit the X button. And now we have our player character, right? He doesn't move yet, he doesn't do anything yet, but he's there. Now we want to go ahead and assign him the image that we created for him. So here where it says no sprite, you can actually just click on this and it'll open up a list of your sprites. Over here, if you have some folders, it will go ahead and show you those folders, and you can click through the folders and find the right image that you want. But since we only have one, it doesn't matter. And here's our SPRT player. We'll go ahead and click that. Boom. There we go. We now have a player. He has his image. He has some code that starts as soon as he is loaded. Nice and easy. So we'll go ahead and click X on that for now. Now we'll go ahead and open up the scripts. So we're going to right click on scripts and we're going to hit create script. Now here, and when you do that, it'll also ask you to go ahead and put in a name for the script. I normally just go ahead and say player movement. Boom. And if that didn't happen for you and you weren't able to edit it, you can right click it and hit rename. So now we have our player movement script here, and here we are going to define the player's movement, collision, and key bindings. There we go. So here we're going to define all of that information for the player so he can actually move around, do all that stuff, and it'll be great. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end this one here. Make sure that your player character has the code in the create event, and then go ahead and come back. We'll go ahead and then do the player movement script, and we'll get the player moving around and doing all that fun stuff. Alright, hope to see you guys in the next one. Take care.